This is Carl Polachuk, and you're listening to the SMB Community Podcast, produced by and for the Small Biz Thoughts community. We are dedicated to making every IT professional a successful IT professional. Hi, I'm Carl Polachuk, and this is another SMB Community Podcast. My very, very special guest today is Mr. Richard Tubb. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Absolutely sweltering in a heat wave in Newcastle upon Tyne. It almost feels as though it should be as hot as it is in California, but probably not. Is that right?
Well, no, it's by your standards, it's about 40, 41 in Sacramento, so it's hot.
Yeah.
So it's not quite Vegas hot, but you know, it'll do. But I like it, so because we get a nice breeze in the evening and it cools down, and so.
Anyway. It's way too hot here, but thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, and we're going to get together pretty soon. So somehow we live on two different continents and manage to see each other about once a year, sometimes every other year. So I'm grateful for that.
It's good. I enjoy it. It's cool. So we're getting together in Edinburgh in a couple of weeks' time, aren't we?
And in Newcastle upon Tyne.
In my hometown, in my adopted hometown, I should say. So I don't know if the sunshine's going to wait until you get here. It'll probably go back to typical Toon weather, which would be absolutely freezing, and you're going to have to wear a big fur coat.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. So I figured since August is the only time to go to Scotland, I'll go in September. It can't be that bad, right?
Well, you say that. So our mutual friend Nigel Moore from Sydney, Australia, came to visit probably about 6 months ago, and it was a lovely spring day in Newcastle upon Tyne, and he treated it like it was the Antarctic or something. He said he was absolutely freezing. So I said, you are not going to cope here during the winter.
Well, when I was in Ireland last time, 2 years ago, I bought a really nice coat, jumper, and it said Ireland and whatever, and then I went to someplace in Maryland and left it in a restaurant. And it was, it was like a $70 coat. And I'm like, son of a gun. So anyway, if I have to buy a coat in Scotland, I can.
We will make sure you are kept warm.
But I'm going with the belief that I will not need to bundle up that much. So we shall see if that's true.
Should be okay. Looking forward to seeing you over here.
So, and you have some travel coming up. So let's take a step back for people who have no idea who you are, which is there must be 7 of them in the world. But for those 7 people, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got here.
So I used to run a managed service provider business based here in the UK, in Birmingham, in the centre of England. That's a business that I sold about 8 years ago. And to talk about, really to summarise what I do on a day-to-day basis now, I help the owners of other MSP businesses to avoid the many, many, many mistakes that I made when I was an MSP owner. So, and I do that through lots of public speaking, books, blogging, writing magazine articles, those sorts of things. So it's good. I enjoy it, and it keeps me connected in the MSP community, which is very dear to my heart.
So we'll put links down in the show notes, but basically if people go to tubblog.co.uk.
Tubblog.co.uk, they can find all the good stuff there.
Yep. So very good. And people should subscribe to that. Don't you think?
I would have said so, but then I'm biased on these things. But, I recently relaunched my weekly newsletter, inspired by yourself. You put out a phenomenal, newsletter every week with events and things like that. It's so we've recently relaunched our email newsletter. So tubblog.co.uk/NL. I would encourage people to go there, because if they just want to dip the toe in the water and see what's going on this side of the pond in the UK, in the MSP community, that's a great way to keep up to date on the events and everything else that's going on.
All right. And did that just come out like today, or?
It did indeed. At the time of recording this, yes, it came out this morning.
It comes out on Tuesday in the US.
Yes.
Right? So I don't know if that came out like early morning for you. You got a time zone thing
Tuesday
going on.
in the UK, every Tuesday morning UK time. So yeah.
So actually, as Tuesday begins in the world, it begins in Greenwich Mean Time. So
Absolutely. We are where time came from.
exactly. All righty then. So, and then you have got a book, which we'll also link to here. So why don't you tell us a little about what's going on with that?
Absolutely. Well, it's the second book that I've put out there. This book's called The IT Business Owner's Survival Guide. And the premise of the book really is how to save time, avoid stress, and build a successful IT business. Now, I'm going to say up front, Carl, you hate me doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. You've been such a big inspiration to me and so many people within the MSP community. And just before we came on air, we were talking about relax, focus, succeed. And this is a book that really had, a huge impact on me when I was an MSP owner and read it. And I took a lot of those lessons to heart. So carrying forward to the IT Business Owner Survival Guide, I see so many MSP owners who are struggling. They are, falling down. They're going under with these things, and they don't need to do that. I learned from you and many other people that, it isn't just about survival, it's about thriving as well. So
Right.
This is my way, the book is my way of putting together some of the things that I've learned from you, from other people over the years, to help cope with things such as information overload. We all get too many emails. And not just about surviving, but thriving as well. So many MSP owners say, well, I don't do networking. I don't do marketing. I haven't got the time. So I teach them, well, here are some really simple ways to do marketing consistently. So, the title of the book is about the survival guide, and the first half of the book certainly is about getting things back in control and getting out from under. And the second half of the book really is about, okay, how can you thrive with steps that are gonna move you forward towards your goal? Because whilst we all love the MSP industry, we know there's a lot of people that are barely surviving in it, and I want to eliminate that. I want people to thrive and to enjoy what they do.
So this book, is it something for newbies or something for established folks who have been doing this a while and realize that they're not moving quite as fast forward as they would hope?
It's a good question. I think the feedback that I've got is that established IT businesses are the people who are getting the most from this. So I've had a few reviews on Amazon and what have you, and one of the best bits of feedback that I've got is, I wish I'd have read this book when I first started out, which is sort of a little bit sad to hear, but also good to hear for me as well. But likewise, I've had a number of people who are just starting out who have bought this book. And so whilst it talks in the tense of people who have been doing it for a while, there's lots of good stuff in here. So if you're not, struggling at the moment, I wouldn't let that put you off from buying this book, because you don't want to get in a position where you are struggling.
Well, the other thing is, I don't know, this book is probably 250 pounds or something like that, but most books are 10, 20, 30, $40, and anybody in this industry who can't afford that, you are really struggling. I get people who, they email me and they say, hey, is there any way I get a discount on this, book? And I'll be like, it's a $30 book. I'm sorry. Everybody wants a discount, and some people are just in the habit of asking for that. But at some point, a book is the absolute best investment you can make in your business, because it's got lots and lots of good things. And if you only do one of them, it pays for itself. So it's not like a $3,000 seminar or something like that. So,
well, you've just struck upon something that was another one of the motivators for me actually writing this book. And that was the fact that quite often, as I'm sure you do, I get emails from people. Some people I know, some people I don't know. And they tell me that they're struggling, and they unload and they say, this is going wrong and I'm not earning enough. I've not taken any holidays, and this is going on in my personal life, and all of these things. And of course, having been there the same way that you have and done that and been through those challenges, I totally sympathize and empathize with what they're going through. And I try to answer that for them. But of course, the people who need this book the most are probably the people, as you've just highlighted, that are the least likely to take the advice on board. So for me, I never like to turn anybody away when they ask for help. So part of the motivation for this book was, okay, put together the survival techniques. I've been through this myself, had some really dark days as an MSP owner, and sold the business and come out the other side. And so I can look back now with hindsight and share the things that enabled me to not only survive, but to thrive. And so this is my way of putting together that kit, that SOS kit for people to say, look, all of the answers are in there. Go away. If you do one thing just to break the cycle of being too busy and barely surviving and getting through day to day, if you can just do one thing, read this book, take some time out to focus on yourself, and the answers are in there. And so it's my great hope that people will actually read this book, and not just read it but take action on the practical advice that I give.
Right. I do get those emails, people who for one reason or another, that's just they're at a point in their career where they just need somebody to slap them on the back and say, you're going to be just fine, and here's maybe a couple of little things that you can do. And so it's in many ways, it's an honor to be connected with a community that is open like that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it absolutely is. And we've been through it. All of us who have, built an MSP, sold an MSP, are running an MSP. We've all been through it. So totally understands the situations that you can get into. But, you need to take action to stop the rot and to change things around. And so this book is giving people practical advice to actually change direction.
So give me one example of a thing that you talk about in the book that helps people get unstuck.
Okay, so, and this is going to be a controversial one. I'm going to go straight in with this. I'm a geek. I love technology. You and I talk about tech and gadgets all the time.
Just so you know, that is not controversial.
The controversial part of the advice I'm going to give is not to rely on technology too much. And I'll give a specific example. Smartphones, fantastic. They're ubiquitous. Everybody's got them. You can stay connected 24/7. Should you stay connected 24/7? Absolutely not. And so there's a whole chapter, in the book where I deal with sleep. Get a good night's sleep. You're going to be able to make better decisions. You're going to have more energy to change course. And yet, when I speak to most people who work in the IT industry, they tell me that they take their smartphones to bed with them. The first thing that they do when they get up in the morning is turn their smartphones on, if they were ever turned off, Carl, but They look at their smartphone from the bedside cabinet and they start to read and reply to email. This is not cool. This is not going to help you win the morning. So, this is something I, as a geek, as a technology person, this is uncomfortable for me to get into the habit of turning the phone off of an evening, having some downtime, giving my brain time to think and to process the day. And then the following morning, I'm lucky. When I ran an MSP, I really enjoyed it. The work that I do now, I jump out of bed and I'm thinking about work. Do I immediately jump into work? Heck no. Because I've got good habits that I've picked up off you over the years, like I read a chapter of a book and I meditate of a morning. But back to, that one thing that I want people to take away is that technology is brilliant. It keeps us connected. We shouldn't let technology dictate to us when we're connected. We should be the ones who choose when to turn on, when to turn off. And so the number one thing I say to people is, look, don't take your phone to bed. Don't read emails in the morning. Choose when you use technology. Don't let technology choose when you use it. Well,
let me give you a little story. This is an old man get off my lawn kind of story. But I was running, before I had an MSP, when I was running the last real job I had, I was running a company, and I remember when laptops were just being introduced into business. And part of the sales pitch was that you could be connected everywhere. And part of the pitch to bosses was your managers, your employees will never be out of touch. And that all sounded really good until people actually took them on vacation and actually took them, 300 miles away for Christmas, and they were on all the time. And we've only gotten worse since then. And as you say, the smartphone, I would not even take a smartphone with me to a social event, except I want to take a picture. I want to check in, right? But then you end up putting it on the table, and there's research that even a smartphone face down on the table affects the interaction of the people at the table.
Absolutely.
It's quite amazing how it is in every pore of our existence today. Do you give a sample of your out of office email in the book?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think it's, I can see you smiling at that. For those who don't know what Carl is alluding to, well, since I've sold the MSP business over the last 8 years, it started off as an experiment and it's now a permanent thing. I gave up working Fridays. So I do not work on a Friday anymore. That is my time. I do fun stuff. And so I've got an out of office message that goes on a Thursday evening. And he basically says, thanks for your email. I will read your email on Monday and not a minute before. And the reason I'll read your email on Monday is because I'm not working on a Friday. I'm not going to check emails. And then it goes on to say, hey, if you are really dead set on, interrupting my Zen and peaceful relaxation time, you will know how to get hold of me. And I do that. At no point do I say to people, here's my cell phone, give me a call. At no point do I spoon feed to people and say, here's an easy way to interrupt me.
Right.
Let's face it, the vast, vast majority of people are lazy. They will get a message like that and they will say, oh, but I really need to speak to Richard for my reasons right now, but I don't know what his cell phone number is. It never occurs to them to actually put in Richard Tubb cell phone in Google because it's there. It's easy for people. So it does two things, that out of office message. It sets boundaries. It says that I've got a life outside of business. And so there's plenty within the book that talks about setting boundaries with clients, with the wider business community. If you allow people to contact you at all hours, shock, they will contact you at all hours. And so many MSP owners that I speak to, they say, well, my clients are calling my cell phone directly. They're, emailing me at all hours of the day. They're getting in touch. And I say, well, do you let them?
Right.
Or told them that I'm not available out of hours. Oh, no, I never thought of that. So there's a chapter devoted to, to setting boundaries, to putting in place practical ways to say to people, hey, these are the hours that I work and I'm not contactable outside of these hours. Right. And of course, Carl, I know that in the MSP industry, emergencies happen, but there's a difference between giving people the ability to contact you in emergency and spoon feeding them and saying, look, you can bother me at any time of day or night. Right. There's a difference.
But it's interesting because you probably have a way to get a hold of your doctor in an emergency or your dentist, but you don't call them all the time and say, hey, I just wanted to, make sure that you know that I'm going to be coming in for a physical at the end of December, right? Right? You don't do non-emergency stuff, but our clients are not that way. Once they have your number, it's hard for them to know. So I think we could be better than we are at saying, in an emergency, this is the procedure, right? And the rest of the time, sorry, it's not happening. Now, I think that it's an interesting red velvet rope that you've put up, because there are people who will not do business with you because of that email. They will say, look, I need to be taken seriously. He's not taking me seriously, whatever. People are personally offended when you limit your access. And, or they say, well, I don't want to do business with somebody who doesn't work 80-hour weeks. and the reason I say it's a good thing, it's a red velvet rope, is you don't attract people who are turned off by that. And you do attract people who say, well, there has to be some limit. And I hope someday I can be like Richard when I grow up and limit how much my business infringes upon my life. And that is one of the great challenges that you mention in your book, is your business just constantly infringing on your life.
Yeah. I mean, let's look back over the last 8 years since I've had that out of office, and I tailor it every week. And I can't believe I'm going to do this, Carl, but if anybody wants to email me on a Friday, richard@tubblog.co.uk, there you go. You can get the out of office message.
Yeah, you can get a free instant download.
But, and, you know, all joking aside, people have emailed me on a Friday just to get the out of office to see what I'm up to, because, you know, there's usually a joke or whatever in there and telling people what I'm up to. But in 8 years of that out of office message being there, I have had one complaint from one person who works incredibly long hours, who wants other people to work incredibly long hours. And I said, that's not for me. And so that is a person that I don't do business with. Everybody else has been attracted to the idea of, I aspire to not working on Friday, or to work a 4-day week, or even to get my Saturdays and Sundays back, you know, right. Those sort of things. So you're absolutely right. That red velvet rope, it wasn't something I consciously did, but it attracts people who share the same worldview as me, that work isn't everything. Work is important, but it doesn't define who I am. And so that's one of the messages I'm trying to get across to MSP owners.
Very cool. Well, you know, I always think that it's important to limit how you want people to communicate with you. As you know, and many people have heard me say many times, I don't answer my phone, period. I mean, if I have it in my hand and I'm looking at it and my daughter calls, I might answer it, but I might answer it, right? And I'm only going to know she's calling because I see the phone light up. My ringer is never on. And often my phone is in another room, even when I'm home. And so it's just not the way you get a hold of me. And I was at a conference recently and I gave somebody my card and said, oh, we should do this and this and this. And they said, great. And now I have your number. And I said, no, you don't. And they looked at my card and they said, you don't have your phone number on your business card? And I said, no, I don't want you to call me. If I put that on there, somebody is going to call me. And like you say, it's not a secret. My number is all over the internet. It's on whatever, 100 websites I own. So it's not a secret, but it's not my preferred method of communication. And I think it's perfectly okay in business to have a preferred method. You also know I'm not a big fan of the text message, right? That
absolutely.
And Facebook Messenger and all this other crap, right? Like, we have email now. Let's just use email.
There's another aspect to this that's probably worth sharing, and this applies very much to MSP owners. So in the out of office message, I said something along the lines of, if you need to contact me, you will know how to.
Right.
Otherwise, get in touch with my PA, Holly. So I'm giving them the easy option, and I'm giving them, if you want to get in touch with me, here's what you need to do. And do you know how many people have got in touch with me on a Friday over the years? None, because everybody's respected that. Now, there's two reasons for that. One, people are respectful, but two, I'm going to put it out there, people are lazy. If you put tripwires in the way, so I'll give you another example. I was getting overwhelmed with LinkedIn inquiries. People want to connect with me. It's very flattering, but over the years that I've learned is, or I've put the role together, if you want to connect with me, you've got to put a customized, hi, Richard, I would like to connect with you for this reason. If you send me, hi, Richard, I think we should connect on the professional network, it's shown no effort on your part. No, nothing at all. So for the longest time, I said to people in my LinkedIn bio, if you want to connect with me, here's the way to do it. And do you know how many people actually read that and paid attention to it?
I would say none.
None. So it's reached the point where it's okay. People aren't paying attention to the instructions that I'm giving them. So what I did was, on LinkedIn, I turned off the option for open connections. Now, if you want to connect with me, you've got to put my email address in, richard@tubblog.co.uk. Do you know how many people have actually gone ahead and done that since I've turned that on?
Very few.
I can count on one hand. So I've had it turned on the last 6 months, 6 weeks. And I can count on one hand the people who have connected with me. Now, some of you might be saying, well, why are you dissuading people from connecting with you on LinkedIn? My answer to that is, people are connected to me all over the world easily. It's called the World Wide Web. You can just get in touch with me very, very easily. I don't need to be connected with you on LinkedIn. But secondly, if you're wondering where you could get my email address from, it's super easy to find. In fact, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, on the first line of the profile, it says, my email address is richard@tubblog.co.uk. And yet, out of the 50 or so LinkedIn inquiries, LinkedIn connection requests I was getting a week, since I've asked for an email address, it's gone down to, say, 1 a week.
Wow.
So, which is incredible, isn't it? That people aren't taking the effort to read the profile or do anything. And I think
no, people will not take an effort in that regard. Although I would think, like, if you present at a conference, that you would get whatever 10, 20 requests very quickly.
Absolutely.
So,
but the point I want to make for MSP owners is this idea of putting tripwires. Don't make it too easy for people to do business with you, because, as you said earlier, Carl, you end up getting people with unreasonable demands coming to work with you. So from an MSP's perspective, what would it look like if you put some tripwires in place for people? What would it look like if you asked potential new customers to, say, fill in a questionnaire, or give you a couple of pieces of information before you proceed with proposals?
So let me ask another tip from your book, because that leads into, well, if I limit the mentality of, if I limit who contacts me, who does business with me, then I'm going to lose money, because I have to do business with everybody who comes along, right? I have to take every little, penny that comes along. And obviously that's not true. And people know it intellectually, but they feel like they have to in their business.
Yeah. And we talk about niching, or niching, as I guess you would say in the US there. And people's, their first fear with that is, I'm going to miss out on a ton of business. And of course, you and I both know the reality is the exact opposite. So if you limit the type of people that you work with by geography, by price, by speciality, yes, you are essentially, saying to that rest of the market, to the generalist, no, we're not the best fit for you. But you are saying to, it could be 100, it could be 1,000 people, we are the absolute best fit for you. And so, that's the advice that I give to MSP business owners. You can differentiate on price, you can differentiate on speciality, but do differentiate yourself. Do put out there, explicitly say to people, this is who I work with, this is who we work with, this is why we work with them, and this is why we don't work with everybody else. And far from cutting yourself off from a huge section of the market, you'll find that those people who are in that niche, who are in that speciality, are going to be drawn to working with somebody like yourself. Yeah, and that's a much better way to market yourself.
About once a year, somebody contacts me and says, hey, we're going to put together this, finder, so that the businesses in the world will be able to find a managed service provider. And of course, whatever. They might get built, but nobody ever uses them, right? But if you imagine it as an Amazon search, right? You say, I want to find an MSP. Well, I want somebody who is within driving distance. Click. Okay, so that takes it from 600,000 to whatever, 1,000. Then I want somebody who specializes in manufacturing. Okay, now you're down to 100, right? And I want somebody who is certified either by Microsoft or CompTIA. So now you're down to 250. And literally, click, 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 when you think about a business owner fine-tuning who they want to have as their IT service provider, the more niche-y you are, the more likely it is that you will survive for the clients that you want.
Absolutely. And I touch upon in the book the one of the best ways to get your business out there, business networking. Going to local events, meeting people do business with people they know, like, and trust. Getting out there and actually meeting people. However, I see IT business owners, they go out there, and when people ask them what they do, they say, we do IT support in Birmingham, England, or we do IT support in Sacramento, California, or whatever. That's a fairly wide, area. But if you went there and said, hey, we do IT support for engineering companies within Birmingham, England, or we do managed service, we do IT support for surf shacks within Sacramento, California, or wherever. I'm making this up as it goes along, but that enables people then to almost lodge in their memory who you are, what you do. And sure enough, the next time they come across an engineering company or a surf shack that needs IT, you're going to be very, very memorable to them, as opposed to being just one of 100 other IT companies within that geographical area. So it's about making yourself memorable to people.
So here's the next question, and we're almost out of time, but what's next for you? What things have you got going on? And other than visiting me in Scotland, where can people see you?
So conferences coming up in the UK, I will be at the CompTIA EMEA conference, which is the big CompTIA conference that takes place in London. I believe it's in October time. And I'll also be at DatoCon in French France, in Paris, later this month, later in the year as well. So people can catch up with me there in person. So always like to say hello to people at events. And again, if anybody wants to see all of the events that I'm going to be attending over the next 6 months to a year, the best place to do that is at the newsletter, tubblog.co.uk/NL.
NL, newsletter.
Yes.
Very good. So, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well.
Thank you, sir.
So, well, that is what I had for today. Thank you for being here, as always, and I look forward to doing this again.
I look forward to it soon, and I'll see you in Scotland for a whiskey in a couple of weeks.
You got it.
Cheers, Carl.
Thank you for tuning in to the SMB Community Podcast. If you found this useful, interesting, or fun, please subscribe, share with your friends, and give us a thumbs up on your favorite social media. Please check out the show notes at smbcommunitypodcast.com and give us your feedback.